All right. It is showing that we are live now, and I apologize, friends. I'm sitting here talking to you guys the entire time, having no idea no one's even listening. Listen, we're going to go a little deeper in the broadcast today than what I normally do. And we are live, and so this is going to be a little bit about the type of information you will hear when we're in Kansas on December 1st and 2nd. That will begin on 2 p.m. on December the 1st on Saturday, and also to be a full day on Sunday beginning at 9 a.m., running through, I think it's 6 or 7 p.m. on Saturday. Excuse me. And so what you're going to hear today, even for those that went to the Tennessee conference, I'll be speaking about things, and I'll get into a little bit today what I have not even shared even in Tennessee. This is the website. It's conference.israelinewslive.org. 16 days until the conference in Kansas City, Kansas. I do want to point out also, if you go to our website, israelinewslive.org, if you scroll down the page, well, I'm sorry, I'm already on it. On the main part of the, well, let me just show you real quick. On IsraeliNewsLive.org, we do have a video clip here you can watch to get a little idea of some of the things we said in Tennessee. I think that's a blessing that you can kind of get some idea of what's being spoken about during this conference there. And of course, if you go to IsraeliNewsLive.org at the top, you can just go to more information. It takes you right to the website where you can register to come. We have plenty of seating available there, so please definitely come. Groups are given discounts as far as in groups. If you have 2 or more, up to 5. And of course, you can keep reordering if you have a larger group. We've had groups of 25 coming as well. But at any rate, let me get into what's going on here, guys. There's been a stabbing attack in Jerusalem, in the police office there in South Jerusalem. 2 officers were wounded, and 1 officer also in a crossfire. We're already aware of the ceasefire agreement that Prime Minister Netanyahu reached with Hamas in Egypt, something that has caused a whirlwind of reaction in Israel because, as those of you that may know, we have seen the situation in Israel deteriorate with the people living near Gaza because of the ceasefire. They're saying that they did not want a ceasefire. They wanted the Israeli government to go in there and put a stop to Hamas. And, so there's a lot of news. I'm just trying to see if I could find that real quick there. Let me just put Gaza on there as well. And, of course, the defense minister, Liberman, has actually resigned, saying that he did not agree with Netanyahu to do this ceasefire. He thought what he did was the wrong thing. But what you're not aware of is that what's happening with Liberman, with Netanyahu, with the people, with the protest, etc., these things are organized. Even if the people are not aware of what's going on, this is very much an organized event. This is a movement. Even the stabbing at the police department, everything is being coordinated on both sides of the fence. The CIA is involved. They are also working with the Palestinians in the background. In fact, there was, I'll come back to this issue in a minute with Liberman, but this was posted by Joe Truzman, and it's a artist depiction of suitcases of cash lighting off these rockets, over 400 that was sent into Israel. Of course, the Iron Dome was only able to take out 70 of those rockets, and oddly enough, the artist is a Hebrew guy. It's Murad is the name of the guy that drew it, or at least he's putting his name in the cursive Hebraic writing on the artistic work. Now, it is a known fact by Israeli journalists that the CIA has been heavily involved in helping the Palestinians over the years. And also Shimon Peres, the late Shimon Peres, was also very much abreast of what was going on in Israel, as they have created this chaos between the Israelis and the Palestinians, whether it be Gaza or the West Bank, in order to bring about a strife, to bring about not only a new world order, but a 2-state solution. And you could call it a 1-state, 2-state, whatever you want to call it. At the end of the day, this is part of the New World Order agenda, and this is what you're not being told. All right, and I got to share with you because I did the video on this. This right here, 2 nations will be separated from the womb. I shared this video here. This one is dated, what? I know it's in 2013, but I forget exactly. Okay, here we go right here. July 24th, 2013. I did this right after they came out and said that, before, almost a year before, they said that the two-state solution was a failure. That John Kerry's 9 months negotiation was a failure. Now, oddly enough, I remember Paul Begley, he had me on his broadcast about this because I was showing how that 2 nations would come from the womb. That Rebecca was literally looking at a prophecy. She had 2 children in her womb. It was Esau and Jacob. They were wrestling, and then when they would be born, it would be 2 nations would come from the womb. And initially, I was actually thinking maybe this was a Palestinian state in the state of Israel. But almost immediately, when I did the video, I realized that the two-state solution had nothing to do with the Palestinians. It was Esau, and Esau is Rome, according to Obadiah's prophecy. And Esau was the one that was actually using the Palestinians, according to Daniel's prophecy in chapter 11, that is, where it says that he would come up strong with a small people. Now, he's using the Palestinians for his initiative in order to gain control of Jerusalem. So in a new world order, the Vatican would have the old city of Jerusalem to be able to rule and reign from Jerusalem. And I brought that out even more so, especially when they said that the two-state solution had failed. I showed clearly how that John Kerry's two-state solution never failed, because within less than 30 days after the negotiations had came to an end, Pope John Paul II in 2014 held a communion service there in the upper room right above the Tomb of David on Mount Zion, and Netanyahu had already approached the Orthodox rabbi there of Mount Zion and asked him to hand over Mount Zion to the Vatican. So yes, the government heavily involved, Shimon Peres, Netanyahu, in giving away Mount Zion to Rome is part of this New World Order deal. All right, now, so this was the prophecy of Rebecca. It's not the Palestinians and the Israelis. It was the Vatican getting, of course, siding with the Palestinians for that two-state solution to be manifested as far as the prophetic side of that. Now, I want to go back, though, to the idea of the CIA's involvement, because this goes all the way back to the days when I worked with the CIA from 1983 to 1990. And of course, as you may well know, it was under President Ronald Reagan when George H.W. Bush was the vice president of the United States that we have the Iran-Contra affair that comes out of all of this. George was clearly running the show during those days there. And of course, I'm very much aware of the Iran-Contra affair, the things that were going on, the supply of weapons, etc., things like that, because I already knew that the U.S. government was smuggling drugs into the United States. They were using the CIA operatives to be able to make sure that the operations would go smooth. And at the same time, we were smuggling the weapons into the Contras in Nicaragua. I'd been involved in a lot of different I shouldn't say negotiation, but involved in a lot of different events there with Central America, Belize, Mexico, and of course these cartels that were involved down there. So I'm very privy to a lot of that, and so I share this stuff in the meeting there in Kansas City for those of you that want to learn more about that. And of course, I know a lot of international situations that have never been resolved to this day. But at any rate, I noticed that Barry Chamish had written an interesting article, and I'm going to go to that here in just a moment to give you a little idea of what's happening with this situation in Gaza right now. Why was there a ceasefire? And you have to understand, the Israelis, the CIA, they all are in this together. They're playing both sides of the fence. Liberman resigned. It's all part of the Hegelian dialectic right there. They're playing both sides. And this is to push the people into accepting a peace plan that they have no idea is what's part of the deal there. So at this point here, now they need the Israelis to rile up. They want the Palestinians to rile up, get into such a conflict here in the Middle East. And at the same time, they're planning on going after Hezbollah in the north, taking out the S-300s over in Syria at the same time. And the reason, of course, they're going to take out the S-300 system is because that would be a threat to the Israeli security and when they're trying to take out Hezbollah. And of course, it's like the final stage of the New World Order. The thing is, look, I've already seen the plans for the port in Haifa the Chinese are building. And the fact that China is there building the port in Haifa with Israel, that lets you know that when the things go south in Syria, if Russia's not on board with the plan, then Russia will be fighting the United States in a war alone without China's help, because China's clearly taken the side of Israel when it comes to Haifa and the port. And again, that's only part of the Silk Road, the New World Order initiative. All right, now, so let me show you something else as well, though. I'd mentioned the other day before about Hamas. Hamas is something that was begun by the Israeli government. And of course, we know this. You can look at the Wall Street Journal from 2009 when they wrote about this right here. And they speak about in here Avner Cohen, who actually was the very man that says Hamas, to my regret, is Israel's creation. And they had created it to try to be a counter movement against Yasser Arafat's Fatah. But what they don't tell you in the Wall Street Journal, though, is that Yasser Arafat was also working with Shimon Peres, the Pope of Rome. And of course, once they made the agreement back in 1994, then Yasser Arafat began the Intifada. All these things had to happen because why? In order to bring about a two-state solution, you got to get the people to accept they need a two-state solution because there's so much violence between the two sides that the only way to resolve it is to have that. That's why I say what's currently happening in Israel right now in Gaza is all a part of the Hegelian dialectic. They have created the problem. The CIA has funded and allowed these missiles to be fired into Israel in order to cause mayhem and chaos amongst the people of Israel. And as a result, now the Israelis are demanding for the government to do something about Hamas. And Netanyahu's lack of doing anything also brings about a divide, but it's all intentional. And this is what you're not aware of, right? So let's look over here, though. Barry Chamish, I want to give you a little inside information here. And this is going back during the days of Jonathan Pollard, who was spying for Israel, but you'll be surprised some of the people involved. It says in 1987, a government commission of inquiry headed by Abba Eban issues its report on the Pollard affair. It concluded the man's most responsible for the fiasco was Shimon Peres, and it's true, he was, who became prime minister in late 1984. He was not only apprised of Pollard's intelligence, he read it daily, receiving smaller portions of blame were Defense Minister Yitzhak Rabin and Foreign Minister Yitzhak Shamir. This long-buried report is naturally long forgotten because Peres spent a good week denying every word in it, arranging the end of Eban's political career. But let us not forget, the official investigation conducted by the Israeli government concluded that Peres was the chief culprit. Now, by the way, as I'm reading this here to you guys, and I'll make sure you get enough room to be able to see this yourself, Barry Chamish was a good friend of ours. He'd been on Israeli News Live before. He has been truly, by the elite Zionists, he was railroaded. They tried to murder him on more than one occasion. Barry shared a lot of this stuff with me of what was going on to him in his life there because he was exposing what was happening. But Barry was an Israeli. He fought in the Lebanon War. He was an avid Jew. He stood for the true Torah principle. But at the same time, he also cared about Israel. And this is what I'm trying to get people to realize. If you're truly going to care for the Israeli people, then we've got to get the place where people can recognize who the Mashiach really is, who the Messiah is. And forget standing. Get it out of your mind. The secular government of Israel is heavily involved in setting up a new world order. Now, maybe not every member in the Knesset is on board with this, but believe me, those that are not, in this case here, get railroaded right out of office. All right? Now, let's go on a little further, though. Leading the cover-up. Amir Oren, Haaretz, 1998, Shimon Peres was almost as concerned about domestic policies as he was about American reaction. He was proud of the fact that he, Rabin, and Shamir refrained from mutual recriminations and how that prevented the media from turning it into an Israeli Watergate. Peres worked hard to prevent public discussion. And by the way, he also spent a lot of time denying the talks between him and Pope John Paul II and the move for the Vatican during the time that the Oslo Accords were going on, as Joel Beinerman also reported, another Israeli journalist. Ziad Segal in Haaretz on October the 24th, 1995. One body that studied the subject was a committee headed by then M.K. Abba Iban. In a report published in May 1987, the committee totally rejected the claim of the government of Israel, which stated that the Pollard affair was a rogue operation. Now, it's very important you follow what I'm telling you guys here, because normally I wouldn't read this much information, but they're going to get into the Iran-Contra affair. You're going to find out about that shipment of weapons and stuff. Not only were they supplying weapons from Iran to the Contras in Nicaragua, which was during the time that I worked with the government there, but also how that they were supplying weapons to the Lebanese, the Palestinians, etc., and with the complicity and the very knowledge of Shimon Peres. All right? So that's why I say, you have no idea. They play both sides of this. They create the problem, and then they have the solution for you. Well, the final outcome is going to be a new world order. Washington Report on the Middle East, February 2003, Iban disappeared from political life after 1987 for a report criticizing Labor Party leaders Shimon Peres. Wow, isn't that interesting? And also Rabin died. And of course, they make it look like the attacker did it, but as is brought out in the book Who Murdered Yitzhak Rabin by Barry Chamish, he also shows you that there was another wound that was the fatal wound. The wound that he was shot with by the radical guy was really not the killing bullet. Okay? A lot of people don't even know that. And Yitzhak Rabin for using American Jonathan J. Pollard to spy on the United States. Both rebuked him the next year. His name was left off the candidates for parliament. Seymour Hersh, The Samson Option, Random House 1991 book that he wrote, the Israeli. Officials most tarnished by the scandal were Rafi Eitan and Aviam Silap, but Eitan did not suffer financially. He was subsequently named to be a high administrative position with Israel's Chemicals, the largest state-owned enterprise in Israel. His surprising appointment was authorized by none other than Ariel Sharon, who had been named Minister of Trade and Industry in 1984. And Sharon is not the only high-present official involved in the cover-up. Attorney General Eliakim Rubinstein was legal attaché to Washington. Embassy Pollard was ejected from and later tried out cover-up tactic that Washington attorney Leonard Garment found odious. Such details must be presented in a wider-ranging future report. For now, let us get to the heart of the matter, which is, of course, the Iran-Contra, as he brings out. The federal government watched, discuss lists. The back channel came alive under Vice President Bush, George H.W., that is, from 1984 to 1991. I was there from 1983 to 1990. The channel was used to direct the launching of American money to the PLO, Palestinian Liberation Organization, for those of you that need to know the name of that. Although Pollard didn't know it when he warned the Israelis that the PLO arms shipments was going through Greece in 1984, he inadvertently blew the whistle on the White House first transactions of arms to Iran. In the summer of 1984, Pollard noticed a pattern of vessels going back and forth from Greece to Yemen, where the PLO had a major base. Right? Pollard passed the tip to the Israelis in the summer of 1984. The Israelis tipped off the Greek authorities, who seized an entire shipload of arms believed destined for the PLO. Neither Pollard nor the government of Israel was aware that they had smashed George Bush's first shipment of arms to Iran. Pollard never realized that he had busted the most secret the most secret event there. White House operations of modern times, the summer of 1984, Greek shipment was dagger over George Bush's head. Loftus ends a secret war against the Jews. Pollard notified the Israelis, who passed word to the Greeks, who raided the armed ship. None of the players knew that this shipment was directly connected to an event 2 months previous in which U.S. hostages had been kidnapped. In Lebanon, the ship had not been commissioned by Arafat, but by the U.S. Vice President Bush, and was ultimately destined for the patron, the Lebanese kidnappers, Iran. The shipment marks the true beginning of the infamous Iran-Contra scandal. All right, so the rest is kind of history when we get into this, but the point being, guys, is that the CIA is heavily involved, especially covertly when it comes to working with the Palestinians or even Hamas and those types of groups there. There's always a key player in the Israeli government that is fully aware of what's going on. Now, could be a question. Maybe Liberman doesn't know that Netanyahu is playing both sides of the fence himself. But I would imagine he does, because right now they're very close to bringing about this new world order and to getting everything into play. The Chinese are making the port of Haifa much larger to be able to handle the pipelines that will be coming through Syria. Israel knows at this point now they're going to have to deal with Hezbollah, and they're going to have to deal with Syria. Abbas is going to have to go in Israel's way of thinking. Now, I don't agree with what's happening, because to me, what should be going on as believers in Yeshua, we should be demanding that President Trump takes a stand for the believers that are in Israel, because the Israeli government doesn't like the believers either, because they're heavily influenced by the party that is an ultra-Orthodox party that wants all believers thrown out, especially those that are Israeli believers. But nonetheless, we are dealing with a very serious situation that's going on in Israel right now, because you have to understand, the Vatican is still going to get their piece of the pie. They're going to be able to rule from the old city of Jerusalem. They're going to create more havoc in the nation there. And ultimately, with Israel fixing to go to take out Lebanon, the Hezbollah in Lebanon, they will also have to take out the S-300 inside of Syria in order for their planes to fly safely. Again, I don't agree with what's going on. I don't think this is the right way, because why? We're headed to a new world order. But yet, unfortunately, they have their propaganda mouthpieces out there to the Christian community to tell you that this is a must-need thing that we have to do. Because after all, Syria will attack Israel, or Iran will attack Israel. Although I don't agree with that, Syria as many times, and even Iran as many times as Israel, 200 sorties they claim to have attacked Iran inside of Syria, and thus far, other than one small little retaliation, we haven't seen Iran try to take down Israel. Let alone Syria. Syria shot down one of Israel's planes, but how many more times does it have to be invaded in their airspace before Syria is allowed to defend itself? Oh, I'm sorry, they're not allowed to defend themselves. You see, we need to stand with Israel. We need to stand with the people of Israel and recognize that our people have returned home in a blind state and need their eyes open. But I am afraid more and more as I watch what's happening, I cannot help but think of Samson. You remember the story of Samson. He had all the strength to be able to defeat all the enemies of the Philistines. But the problem was, even though he was a married man, he decided to fall in love with Delilah, who ended up putting his eyes out. Now, that seems to be, and of course, he was from the tribe of Dan, not from the house of Judah, but from the house of Israel. And that kind of makes me wonder about most of the evangelical community that is backing all the wars of totally annihilating the Syrians, the Iranians, and everybody else in the Middle East to bring about what? You really want a new world order? Or maybe the evangelical community has really had their eyes put out by Delilah. I don't know. Anyway, guys, there's so many things that are troubling me right now. And the thing is I realize that most people that are listening to what I'm saying today really have no clue as to the involvement of different factions of the government. Even like in the case of Venezuela. Right now, Venezuela, yeah, there are Mossad and CIA operatives on the ground. We have insurgents, special forces and stuff. We are over there overthrowing this country, and you can't blame it on the president. I don't think he's a good president in Venezuela either. But the reality of it is the United States wants the oil, and Israel's going to make sure that we get it as well. Of course, it will come at a cost for the Americans to take over the natural resources of the country. After all, Venezuela is sitting on the second largest gold reserve in the world, and seeing as the dollar is failing, we got to do something about that as well. When's it going to end? When will anybody ever truly realize that the only thing we could ever do is to become one with Christ? When will we ever come to a place that we're not going to accept a new world order, which, by the way, the new world order will have the Noahide laws in every nation of the world so they can behead the Christians? You have no idea that right now, the elite of the Israeli government has been training the FEMA members on how to deal with you when the time comes and you will not keep the Noahide laws. Not just America, that's in every nation in the world. In the FEMA camps, I wouldn't want to go to them for nothing in the world. I know this is kind of sporadic tonight, guys, but anyway, listen, if you want to support the broadcast that we do here, go to IsraeliNewsLive.org. We appreciate it. That's our website. Of course, this is conference.IsraeliNewsLive.org if you want to come to the Kansas conference. I promise not to be so sporadic in speaking there, but you can also always go to our website. You can donate right there. If you're having any problems, shoot us an email that you're having a problem, or you can actually go to patreon.com/Israeli News Live. You can support the work we do there. And of course, we have our doing a lot of research on some wonderful messages that I want to share with you guys. So let me just share that with you real quick. But our address there, if you want to help support the broadcast there, DeNoon Institute, 8297 Champions Gate Boulevard, number 442, Champions Gate, Florida, 33896. By the way, I had the picture of my daughter up there just a second ago, and just for those of you that might be curious there, she has an emotional support dog, and you know, the contributions you guys make to this ministry allows us to be able to keep going from week to week and month to month, kind of like those that work a regular job there. But we had a little unexpected situation come up, and that was with my daughter's emotional support dog. She has some massive stones in her bladder. We'd been noticing something was wrong with her. We took her to the vet the other day. It's almost $1,600 to do the surgery alone, just the surgery alone. And I actually put up there, I can read x-rays myself. These are the two stones here in her bladder with a whole bunch of little tiny ones all through there. And she could get the other ones, we could dissolve the other ones, but the vet, and I actually consulted a second vet to be sure. They said there's no way she'll ever pass those two huge ones. They're like the size of big acorns there. And so she's got to go in for surgery in the morning. And it's a little bit more than what we can afford. So we started a little GoFundMe to try to help cover that cost. So anyway, if you want to be a part of that, it's on our Facebook page, Israeli News Live. All you have to do is just go right there, Israeli News Live on Facebook. We certainly appreciate your help. I'm Stephen Ben-Nun. You're watching Israeli News Live. Erev Tov.